Hello, everybody. Philosophy Society. It's November 1st, 2023. We're in the Toronto Metropolitan University Library. Achilles Justice here. There's some people in the room, some people online. We can just unplug that thing.
Yeah, very loud. Oh, unplug it.
Okay, so what do you guys think?
About?
I don't know, let's start with that.
What do we think?
What were you talking about right now? You're talking about something interesting.
So we're talking about that. What do you think?
Oh, we were talking
About how do the events of life shape us?
Nice to see you. That's very good. Oh, I am.
Really? Awesome.
Awesome.
Nice.
Meet you. Very meet you.
I can just say something about it.
Okay, so I'm just kind of almost starting from scratch today because you guys are new and I want to just entertain you.
Sure.
Right? So the question is, what do you think?
What do you think about?
Sorry, I'm doing a meeting. So that's not going to happen. I do a meeting here every week at 8. Where are you? Yeah, brother, I'm doing it's a meeting room. That's what it's for. I'm not going to do that. I'm sorry. Okay, so what's going on is, what do you think? Right? So we have two ways to answer this question. We can talk about what we ought to be thinking and what we are thinking. Right? So one is descriptive and the other is normative. Right?
Yes.
So this is what's going on in the present moment. So we're describing the way the world is. And then this one is the way the world ought to be.
Study this.
All right. So I'm going to say, what do you think? We can say, what are you thinking about? So right now, like I'm thinking about the stuff I'm saying, or that guy coming in here and the ethical dilemma of me being loud and him doing the thing. Okay? Think about that.
Exactly.
Okay. Or you can say, well, what ought you think? And are there things that are important for you to be thinking about? And what would those things be? So when I first met you, right, we talked about the Israel, Palestine issue. That was something that that was going on, and maybe it was both.
Yes.
Right, where we ought to think about it, and it's something that we were going on. And we had a discussion about religion. So we covered some territory there, right? What else? So that's descriptive. So the part of this is like the ought part. We could say that like in our world, religion, because of what happens, is something maybe you could say that's important to think about. What does it say about religion? How do we deal with it? Right? What do we do about it? Right? And then another one we can talk about is ethics. Ethics in itself is normative. What is right and wrong? Right? Now they're being passive aggressive by talking. So ethics is like our mode of action, right? What it means to be a good person, the consequences of our actions, how we're acting in the world, right? What we're doing. The other thing is like, if you're really studying, why are you talking so loud? That's contrary to what's going on. So there's like an alpha thing going on here, like, right? So you do like a psychological analysis of this little phenomenon that occurred.
Yes. Exactly.
So we have religion, we have ethics. We also have like, we've been talking about like a way of being or living well, right? And that includes like the mental health stuff and like specific details. So last time, I don't know if I think you were listening to something. I was on Zoom. Yeah. Last time I was talking about like situations and us within the situation and the meaning of the situation relative to a bunch of different factors, right? And so that's a little bit descriptive, right? but it does impact our mental health. And we can talk about mental health as in what is the best way, or what way ought I act as a goal or an ideal, and then what's actually going on, right? What do you guys think? Is there any, so go back to the first point.
What do you think about? Just check this. About revenge? Revenge?
Revenge.
Oh, that's all for revenge.
Revenge. Okay.
We want to
Oh,
take
but-
revenge. Dominating,
Topics.
being dominant.
I'm thinking, I believe there are two different topics, being dominant and revenge.
Yes, they are.
I believe revenge is a little more mature compared to-
Revenge, and then you talk about dominance. Okay, so we can talk about that. So first things we would define what revenge is, right? And in some ways it has to do with justice, a certain form of justice, like retributive justice. Like if someone harms us, we go back and harm them, right? So, dominance is almost a reptilian phenomenon, like the way in which people engage with each other, right, at a psychological level in groups. I don't really know how much dominance would occur if you're just on your own, you're dominating the tree, you're just like, or the rock, you're like, I've dominated you. You know, it's more between animals,
Yes, it is.
right? So it has to do with, like, in some ways, a social hierarchy or a hierarchy within animals. And so what we're doing here, so we have our philosophical method. Okay, so I'm gonna do a little analysis. So what this really shows is just how hypocritical a person would be, right? If they were being silent and they were studying, and I did actually go over my voice a little bit,
Yes, it is, yeah.
right? And they were studying, then it would make more sense. But to come in and say they're studying and we need to have silence doesn't really make any sense, right? It's coming from a place of, like you could say, there is some sense of dominance, like I want to have the territory. If there are men and females together and they have some kind of attraction thing, right? The men will exert more dominance to be perceived as alpha in front of the females to incite attraction. Because women want to make sure that they're around certain kinds of men for safety and other kind of properties. So if there's a girl in there, and one of those guys likes her, he seems like he can take care of business, which is great, you know, but when you actually observe what's going on, if you're directly contradicting yourself, right, by banging on the table, and like, you know, it's very primitive in some ways. You're making a lot of noises, you're banging and shit. That it goes against what you're saying, and so that is an effect of your character and your integrity, just as a person. And so your actions. So, like, let's say there's like T1, T2. T3 over time, and we can like plot these on a graph or whatever. Depending on how you act here, which is like right now, that has certain properties. So if you engage in behavior, this is like how personality develops over time, and you learn to deal with things in ways, but you don't retain integrity yourself. Then you increase the frequency of that poor character trait over time. And then if you do it in all situations with all people and it becomes dysfunctional, now you have a personality disorder, right? So, okay, reeling it back. The first thing we're going to do is define our terms, right? So we brought up 2 points here, revenge and dominance. And so before we even really say, what do you mean by that? You know, and we just have a working definition. It doesn't need to be like overly, we don't have to be very neurotic with the definition. Thank you for being here. He put effort in. He was working and he had to fight his way to get here. He had to dominate the road. And you guys too, thank you for coming.
Thank you.
And so whenever we're gonna philosophize, right? This, as like me doing philosophy right now, is really just about some methodology, right, in the moment. And then the content of what I'm talking about is that like living well stuff that we talked about before. So this methodology stuff, you'll find that in a lot of academic philosophy, almost all, right? Like defining your terms. And there's different ways that people will define terms and how we go through that. But if I don't define my terms, they say, well, what does it even matter? Like, what happens if you don't do it? Then you get into all these problems of reasoning where things just won't make sense, right? So in politics, you'll see people debating, or any debate thing for that, and you'll have certain fallacies, right? Like equivocation. You have one word that has two different meanings. Therefore, the conclusions, if they're based on a different meaning, are going to be different conclusions, right? And so our reasoning can't be the same. We can stipulate more than one definition,
Yes, exactly.
right? But you have to make that clear. Right. So in logic, we have like truth tables, and you can like almost calculate out
Exactly.
different results of different logical formulations
Exactly. Yeah.
and determine what is technically true and what is technically false.
Mhm.
Right. And so if we're going to define our terms, you know, we can go with different definitions. We just want to be clear about that. So you would say, and it's just like in mathematics, right? When we have functions, let x equal 57. Right? And if x equals 57, then y equals 103. Right? So when we define our terms, it's like saying let revenge equal retributive justice. Right? If you harm me, I harm you back. And then Gandhi would say, don't do that. Right? You're gonna be both blind. And so the next point would be like on dominance. So we can talk about social and animal hierarchy. So I almost gave like two different definitions here. The animal hierarchy is a larger category. Right? Social hierarchy is a smaller category because like how social are Komodo dragons. So the best thing if you were going to do a study is you would have two rooms, one with only dudes and one with one girl, two girls, and then you would, you know, just to see like what is the content here, like, what is the nature of this thing as a control, you know. You know that you're like, yeah. Let's be objective. Okay, so we have social hierarchy, animal hierarchy. So that's important because then if you use the term dominance, you want to understand what you mean by that, right? I'm going to expand on that. So let's say that there's different forms of dominance. These are like types. And then we talk about forms. So a form is like how you're doing it. So you can be in like the larger category is the social, and then within that there can be, for example, good and bad, right? Like if it's a necessary fact of how we relate to each other, and observe this too, though. When you look at that other graph, right? We get these spikes of intensity, and it just dies down.
Mhm.
Right? There's like banging, and there's like lots of spikes of intensity, and it dies down. So like, why is that happening? Very interesting, right?
I want to see the reaction if it's really affecting the people we want. For example, they're the target group, right? They're doing it for us, for example, just to get revenge. They want to see how we react. If it's affecting us, they're going to do it again. If it's not affecting us, they're going to.
Well, we would only be able to know that. So there's something called the Hawthorne effect, right? The Hawthorne effect is we change our behavior when we know we're being observed, right? So in like the 1920s, they had this like factory where they were like working on they were doing something. They modified the light in the factory to see if changing the variable of light would determine productivity. And so there's like the factory floor, and then up here there's like the researchers with like the manager, and they're watching all these people, and they have these things of light, and they're regulating it. And they're like, we want to just see if there's more light, if you're more productive. If there's less light, you're less productive, right? Because then it's cheaper for us. So we don't give you fucking light.
Yeah.
Right? We don't care. That's almost like the thing. So, what they realized is it had nothing to do with the light. The thing that changed the productivity was the people watching them.
Were they aware that they were being watched?
Yeah, in this example, you could see them. Right?
Okay.
So the Hawthorne effect is when you are being observed, you change your behavior. So this is a perfect case study. In your, it's not funny. This is me rolling with shit. In your analysis, you would have actually had to have like from the beginning to observe this spikes in intensity. And then you have the variable of the philosophy society comes in, right? And then we see the difference between the two. Right, and then you have a control group where there's no philosophy society. They're just like gone the whole time. Right, for it to be like more of a sound scientific analysis. The science, in this sense, is just the way we approach phenomena, and what we try to do is rule out our effect on the people, whoever those people might be. Right, so we don't want the Hawthorne effect to be determining an individual's behavior, because it's contingent on my observing. And so that's like, maybe you do want to see that, but then you have to look at that, right? So for example, like there's this person, like they did a study and you come into the researcher's office and then you'd leave, the researcher would leave for a minute and there'd be a $5 bill on the ground, right? And they wanted to see how many people would take it and not say anything. And it was like more than 50%, like would just not say anything, right? Which is like whatever. And but if they were being observed, so another one, like they have kids for Halloween going to it's Halloween season, going to get the candy, right? In one instance, there's just a big bucket of candy, right? And it says take one or whatever, you know. And the other instance, behind the sign, there was a mirror and a video camera. There's a video camera in both instances, but there's a mirror. So the kid, when they read only take one and they look at themselves, it engaged something like the Hawthorne effect, but a little bit different. This form of moral evaluation based on their own self-awareness. And so when the kids had the mirror in front of them, they would only take one, right? And so when you go into like convenience stores and they have those mirrors up there, right? I think there's a reason behind that.
I thought that was so that the cashier can see everyone in the store. No,
In some stores, it's the cashiers, like it's not because the cashier's on that side. So if I can see myself from here, you know, how does that affect the cashier can't even see it?
I think there's a camera on.
Sometimes the cameras aren't even real.
That's very true, yes. They're dummy cameras.
Yeah. Like there was this one you can see like the cord taking one. Like that's your raw camera. So okay, so that's the thing. So going back to the
So to the $5 thing.
Yeah.
If the person was desperate for money, did that change the outcome for the person?
so to measure that, you'd have to have a sample of people that were low on cash. You have to find them,
How desperate are they?
right? So like let's say like you take like students that go to the food bank, right? Just so you know that they're broke, right? And then you'd have a control group and an experimental group, right? And then you would see of the students that didn't have money, like and then you could do like a personality test to see which ones took the money, and then some kind of a moral quiz or survey to see like what does their view of themselves have any effect on whether they took the money or not. That would be interesting to see.
Like low balance. So it's not only being desperate for the money, because let's say someone had a low bank balance, but they had a more value to return.
Yeah, to kind of see what their moral code is. Like there's an example of like a woman who if her family, it's like an ethical example, if her children are starving, is it justified for her to steal a loaf of bread? Right? And so she'll go in and steal it. Or like there's an example of like this guy, his wife is suffering from her child is suffering from some illness, and there's a specific medication that is needed. Right? And he's standing and he needs it today, standing at the pharmacy, and he can see the medication and he needs to get it. Right? and the pharmacist won't allow them for some reason. Like maybe he's missing documentation, but he's been there frequently. And so he can violate the social code, right? Or he can do what is best for the survival of his offspring, right? And so what's ethical, right, in that instance? And sometimes you may have to violate the social contract. The problem with psychopaths or narcissists is they just have like a free ticket. They're like, I can just cross this boundary whenever I feel like it, just because I can, right? And it's not that you never should. So going back to this, the normative, like, what do you think? It's not that you never should go across this boundary, right? Like, I'm violating the autonomy of the pharmacist, or I'm violating the autonomy and causing harm to the baker, right? It's more of a utilitarian point, right? That you and your family there will be way more harm if the infant or wife doesn't get the medication because they'll die than the harm to the pharmacist for whatever, for losing that specific medication. So, another point, if it was a different set of students that were sitting in a cubicle and they were silent, I would have been more empathetic. But these guys have been loud since we got here, right? So why are you telling me to be quiet? It's a double standard. So I'm like, fuck you. I'm like, no, this is what I do. I've been here way longer than you. Actually, I used to be in that room, but then we changed it to this room. So, because I was a little dominant in that sense too. But so when we talk about forms of dominance, there can be healthy dominance in the sense that if you bring an unjustified claim to me that supports entitlement, right? Like a customer service thing. Hey, I don't want this thing anymore. Okay, why don't you want it? Well, because it's a piece of shit. Okay, well, did you use it? Yeah. I mean, it's like a bunch of wear and tear. Like if I have this jacket, it's all cut up and like there's puke on it and like coffee stains, and this jacket sucks. And it was like I had it for a year. Right? Well, what's wrong with it? Like you clearly used the thing. Like there's no justification for me to concede. But excuse me, if I brought the jacket in, it was like all of the stitching came out. Right? Like the agreement based on that would be that the reason that you purchased the item was that it had quality, and then it would serve some function for you, right? That's on my end. So in this context, as a library, right, it's supposed to be quiet for everybody, not just for your entertainment, right? So that you can be loud and nobody else can, right? So in that sense, because of the social context, that's why I'm like, fuck you. You know, if you're not going to follow the rules, why should I? You know. And then that. So. Okay, so type forms. So there could be like a healthy or unhealthy version. I'm using this as a spectrum or categories just off the cuff. Like we can philosophize defining terms, and there's certain appropriateness. Like I think relevance is another big one, and something like conceptual clarity. Sometimes things don't make sense. You defined it. You know, you're like. The energy is blue and it is all around us. And like, you can define it clearly, but it may not make any sense, but I can't see it, you know, or like, there's like this ghost that is in the room and it's standing over there, you know, like you may be able to clearly define what the thing is, but it doesn't have any real connection to reality. So what am I supposed to do with that? You know, like the reason that they got angry is because they're possessed by an evil demon. Maybe. Or maybe it's because you were just being an asshole to them, and then they were upset with you because you were disrespectful, right? Maybe that's why. Could be a demon. Maybe you're the demon because you're the asshole. Yeah. So like, going back to this one, if a student came up and said, "Hey, like, I'm trying to study up in the cubicle up there. It's very silent. You know, can you please keep it down a little bit?" Like, okay, sorry, I'll try to keep it down. But if you're just a cocky asshole and you're like, "Hey, we're trying to party over here, and you're partying more than I'm partying," so it's like, dude, you have to fucking check yourself a little bit, you know? Go, like, look in the mirror and think about who you are, right? Okay, so conceptual clarity, relevance, and this notion of making sense. I'm not sure if that's its own category, right? And the making sense part, there's going to be a bit of a process there. You know, initially, maybe that doesn't make sense. Like quantum mechanics, that doesn't make sense. How can it be that it can be in two places at once? You know? a photon is here and it's there, it doesn't make any sense to me, right? And then we would discuss it. And so we would go through this process. We would define our terms, talk about whether the thing in question is relevant to the discussion, and aim for conceptual clarity. So that what you mean is clear and distinct, right, as a method. And so when we talk about what do you think, you're actually going to apply properties like this as a method. This is very individual even. We're not even making it social right now, right? And part of the general philosophical method that I would talk about is like a social philosophical method. It's a bit of a larger category. It's because there's people. So you can have your specific individual method that you're going to do like when you're thinking, right? Because there's what do you think, and then there's how do you think. If you notice this, it was like usually it was high, and then went down, and then kind of plateaued down. So how do you think? And this is the how, right? So there's how you think by yourself when you're just going through life. Shit happens, and you're like, what is this thing? And there's how we think together. And that's going to have other properties, right? So how we think together. So one is like, communication is important. Things like feedback and criticism. The criticism part goes with number 3, conceptual clarity. So you can engage in a self-criticism, right? You can ask yourself, what does that mean? And that's important. People be like, oh, you're overly critical. Like, or you think too much, or you're overthinking. What does that even mean to you? Like, what does it mean like I'm overthinking? Like I had the confidence overflow.
I don't think there's something like overthinking.
I agree with you.
Well, you already know what the solution is, but you keep on thinking despite that.
Okay, that's good. Because what does this person mean? Even though it's not true, we still want to understand what they're trying to say. Right?
Everything.
So overthinking. So going with what you're saying, in depression, one of the problems of depression is something called rumination. Right? Which is kind of what you're saying. Right? So rumination is like going over the same thing over and over and over again with no real change in result. It's almost like the definition of insanity. To do the same thing over and over again and expect different results. It's a little insane, right? So rumination actually has negative mental health consequences. Like the video game character died. Oh, he got depressed. That'd be a funny game. It's like, oh, my character got. It would teach people like maybe a little bit more, you know? I don't know how you can make that game. We'll talk about that. Okay, so rumination. So we can talk about that as overthinking, right? A rumination is almost like you have a thought and you just keep on, you just get in a cycle of thinking over and over again, like forever. Okay, I can see how that's not good. But is that, when you say overthinking, it feels like it's like beyond capacity. Because they talk about overflow.
Yes.
Oh, the coffee overflowed. Oh, I burned my hand. That's not good. So it's like the thinking went beyond the capacity of the container. There's thinking in a fallacious way, like with fallacies, like not being reasonable. Okay.
Thinking of the worst case scenario all the time.
So where's that come from? Your buddy Burns.
Oh, I thought you meant like which category. I couldn't remember which category.
Oh no, that's fine. Nice. You're bringing Burns. He's like an enter in David Burns. So last year, Dimitri was present for I think almost all of it. I did one of the courses for the Philosophy Society with the group. So we got a book and it's called Feeling Good. And I basically went through the entire book with everybody, like we would do in class, but even more in depth because I have all the time in the world for a while. There's no like strict syllabus and I have to follow it. And I only get like 3 hours a week. I can do as much as the people can handle. So we went through the whole thing, which is better in some ways. You know, like sometimes when you're going through readings with a professor, they're like, well, we just can't do this because I don't have time. And you're a little bit like, but I would actually listen to you a bit more. I actually want to know, you know? And I'm like, oh, you can come to my office hours, which means we're not going to talk about it again. You're like, okay. That sucks, you know? And so that is unfortunate for the way that the university is structured. The philosophy society is not structured that way, right? As a comparison from an educational perspective. Any facilitator or instructor, the purpose is to have a fully complete exorcism of whatever that thing is, or you're exercising the topic, you know, until we've learned everything that is needed to be learned for that group. So it's like if we have a specific curriculum, and it's like in this trajectory, that's the goal, right? Some students may like want to go this direction, so the professor would go in that direction and then come back. And then another student brings something up and we go in that direction and come back. So like, let's say you raise a point, I'm like, oh, there's a paper on that. Right, so I say, okay, so I'm going to send that paper out and we're going to read it. But usually in university courses, you just only do this one thing. It's like just the stem of the leaf. But there's these little, like on a leaf, there's these other little things that go up to the side. These other like mini stems, right? So like the leaf looks like this, right? It's not just, the fuck is that? That's what the university does. And they say, you can do everything else on your own. Well, it doesn't make sense. Actually, the purpose of having you here as the instructor is that you're like jacked. You're like Schwarzenegger. You know, and I'm this like little skinny dude coming in. I'm like, bro, teach me how to, I'll lift the weights with you. Meaning I will sit and discuss the topic with you. But, you know, your presence is valuable. It's important. Right? And so really what we want to see is this. And so the way that this is like a meta point on the philosophy study, the way that me and any other instructor for years, so if you guys were going to teach something or you had like a course or a book, and you wanted to go through it, right? That's totally great. You know, that's how you would want to do it. Because it's much more fruitful and you're going to learn way more with it. Right? There's only so much time in the world. You know, how much time do I have? I don't know. I don't have time. But yeah, that's the point. So notice that the spike occurred, that's that passive aggressiveness here, and then now we're in this stage. It hasn't really gone beyond that. So that's your point of this, the passive aggressiveness, which is fine. But again, you have a bunch of students who are like really just like trying to study instead of just like trying to be cool and socialize. What's the difference here? What does studying mean? Okay, I'm being self-critical. I'm observing myself in the situation as well, the best I can. And I would have to be open to you guys saying, well, what about this? And then we would have to include that too, right? That's part of the social method. Because part of the purpose of the philosophy society is you have to make sure that I don't become the tyrant.
Have a dialogue.
You know what I mean? And for me, it's like, it's a thing about like power, right? When you're in a position of power, you have to not become corrupt. You almost have to always just give it up. You have to like let it go. And then because the power is not a thing that you hold, it is something in you. It is you. And so it's like a misconception of what power really is. It's just you. Right? And people will either listen to you or not because of anything that you hold, just because of the kind of person that you are. Right? And so you need to maintain your integrity and not go down the path of corruption. Is to let the power go. And if it's real, if it's true, it's not something you hold on to, it will just come to you. And that's important. Like that's like right down to the Republic, you know, about corruption in government and society and how do we deal with that. And the philosopher came, which in some ways is what the function of the philosophy society is. Like if people in my program, they just laugh at me, these other philosophy students, they just think I'm a joke, but they don't engage in this process. And you can laugh and you can like think it's funny and stupid or whatever, but that guy's a joke. He's not a real philosopher. Okay, why? Like, let's talk about it, you know? And that's really fair. And for the same for you. Anybody that has that like hyena-like antisocial attitude towards you, the bullying function or property, that's part of what it for us to navigate in the world. We got to learn to deal with that, right? And one of the elements of this is like the social self-defense, you know, like or the self-defense of the mind. How do you deal with that as a master, you know, and not just avoid things or whatever. Sometimes you need to stand your ground and be like, no. Other times you need to concede. And we can talk about the Tao a little bit.
We tried multiple times to stand your ground, but then it continues. You just ignore it.
Okay, very good. What do you guys think?
Why are people, for the example you gave, I don't know if you said they're making fun of you for teaching differently? Is it just because that is an irregular way of teaching?
That's one thing. So I'm gonna respond to you in 1 second. That's contrary to, this is the norm. And so that will always get resistance, so right? But that's not the only thing, right? We can, this is a whole thing. And we can talk about it. It's not just the way I'm teaching, it's my approach towards what it means to be a philosopher or being philosophical. And in our society, there's one way. It's that you get a bachelor's of arts in philosophy, you get a GPA higher roughly than 80%, you do a master's somewhere, you get a high GPA, you do a PhD, you complete your dissertation, now you're a doctor of philosophy in this, and you do a bunch of publications, and you get hired as a professor. And based on your publications, or maybe any other independent book you write, the community will judge you and say, yes, we agree that you're a philosopher. That's the standard approach. That's, and for me, I was like, I have this, and I don't know, man, like maybe it's something that it was a wisdom in me that I had before I ever even started learning this stuff this way. Like as a kid, this just came to me because of an abusive environment as a child, right? And so I was like, the people that I'm with don't necessarily have the right answer. I need to figure it out myself, And that's like deeply ingrained in me because the problems with my parents. And so if I'm being taught every day that the guardians are not guardians, they're actually the threat, right? And so you need to become your own guardian. And that's different than being the tyrant or being the bully. Those are different things. My approach is that the academy is like a gym. The university and your courses are like a gym. And you go there to work out, right? But your competency or your skill is not relevant isolated only to your exercise in the gym. It's your being in the world in its totality. Your life is the gym. Every single moment. So there's this book and movie. You've seen it. What is it?
God, the name of it. The Gymnast.
Yeah.
Horrible name.
See, he's like a second year student. You guys are like our first year student. So he's seen certain content. Now they want to know.
No, I don't know.
What was the guy's name in the movie?
Horrible names.
It's okay.
Steve?
It was
No.
like,
Dan.
Yeah. I mean, white.
Who was the old man?
I failed.
Socrates. He's no
His
failure.
name was Socrates in the movie?
They called him
Oh, they
Socrates.
called him. His name wasn't Socrates.
And what was one lesson that Socrates taught Dan?
Think about the ego.
Okay. What about it?
Suppressing
Okay. What's one scene that reminds you of that?
it. I don't think I finished it. Because of the age.
It's okay. Can you think of any scene? Anything that comes to mind? One image.
Where he wanted to know how he got on the roof. And I told him he wasn't ready yet.
Okay.
But he was rushing on. I guess patience.
So I'll tell a story. Right. So Dan is a young university student at Berkeley University in California, and he can't sleep. He's training to go to the Olympics, right? He's a gymnast, and Dan goes out for a run at like 2 a.m. and he sees this gas station. It's open, and he's like, "I'm gonna get something to eat." Whatever. So he goes up there, buys some stuff. The tenant, he's like, whatever. And then he's leaving. And as he leaves, he looks back. And the attendant, this old guy that runs the gas station, is sitting in a chair. And so he keeps on going. He looks back again, and the old man is standing on top of the gas station, like a few seconds later. And he's like, whoa. And the old man's like this, looking at the stars, and looks down at Dan. And just looks back at the stars. And then Dan's mind is blown because he's a gymnast. So he knows that human beings can only like jump a certain height. Right? So he's like, this doesn't make it. Let's go back to this. This does not make sense. What I just observed does not make sense. Right? And so he kind of runs away. He's like, what the fuck is that? And he comes back the next night. And he's like, how did you do that? Swindle, the old man says, you like things explained, don't you? And that's part of what the university is that the whole concept of lecturing is that a person stands there and just tells you shit. Socrates says, I don't want you to get answers from the outside. I want you to learn to get answers from within. Right? Everyone's, another quote, everyone is telling you what to do and what you should think. And Dan responds, so let me guess, you want me to do what you believe and what you think? He's like, no. I want you to figure the answers out on your own. He says to Dan, maybe, like, why are you here so late? Maybe late at night when you can't sleep, you're thinking to yourself, and you're like, I just feel empty. Socrates asked Dan, are you happy? And Dan says, what does that have to do with me? I have girls, I have money, I'm fucking doing good in school, I'm gonna be in the Olympics. He's like, well, why are you, and why can't you sleep? About the ego, there's one scene. So in the movie, the way that the movie is directed, they actually do like a visual thing on the character's face. They make Dan's eyes really blue and his lips really red whenever his ego is happening. I've seen this like 40 times, so I know. And when he's just being his true self, himself in the present moment, then they don't do that. And there's one scene where Dan has this visualization, his narcissistic ego self, that, you know, when I was around your guys' age, it's weird for me to say that, but when I was at that, well, that's when I saw this movie, and I was going through that too. And in my book, one of the chapters online, under the practical philosophy tab, it's called The Deconstruction of Self. And Socratic deconstruction, which is applied to the self. And that's what that is. It's knowing what the self is and being able to separate properties out of it and letting go of the stuff that's not good for you and honing in on the parts of you that are your best self. Understanding, why is it the case that I act this way? What is it in me that is happening? Why am I doing this? Right? So let's go back to this. What do you think? This is normative. These are things that are important to think about. When they occur, it's descriptive. This is what I'm thinking about in this moment. But you kind of need to have the normative attitude. You need to have the net open to catch the butterfly. If you just go around chasing the butterfly, it's going to be very difficult. But if you're prepared to think in a certain way, it'll be easier for you to see it when it occurs. Right? Like you kind of need the telescope to be able to observe Saturn a little bit better. Right? It's a good thing. If there's no telescope, then it's difficult for you. And so concepts and ways of thinking are a form of conceptual technology. It's a thing you're using for a purpose via the brain and mind. Right? And that's part of the reason why we're here, is to kind of like just work out a little bit. You prime yourself. That way you can think a bit differently for the next little while. And then you come back and remind yourself how to think again. That way when stuff happens to you throughout the week, I don't know if you guys were here, I think you were, when I said at the end of the day, mindfulness is kind of the beginning. And The Peaceful Warrior, that film, is about that. It's about mindfulness and being present. There's a moment when Socrates says, meet me at the bridge tomorrow on campus. It's like a bridge with a little creek. And there's Dan comes, okay, I got some shit to do. I'm here. Can we make this quick? I gotta swim. He's like, sure. And he grabs Dan and he throws him off the bridge. Dan's like, ah! Falls in the water. And then Dan gets out of the water. He's like, what the fuck is going on? Runs up to the old man. He's like, what are you doing? Are you crazy? Why are you throwing me off the bridge? He says, when you were falling, were you thinking about all these things you had to do? He's like, no. He's like, what were you thinking about? Nothing. He's like, exactly. You were completely immersed in the moment. You were present. You even had a word for it. Ah! Right? And then Dan's like, you're out of your mind. He said, it's taken a lifetime of practice. And so being mindful, and then this is like movie stuff, but he like grabs Dan and because Dan, he's like, there's always something going on. And Dan says, there's nothing going on. And he's like, look. And then Dan becomes mindful of his environment instead of just being in his thoughts and what he's just going back to the rumination. Or we could say overthinking. Overthinking, I don't think makes much sense as a conceptual statement. There's other words we can use. So sometimes when someone says something and you're like, that's not a good word, right? It's best to replace them with different. Do you mean rumination? Do you mean that I'm in logical error? Right? I think people use overthinking in a different way, in the sense that they may lack capacity for thought. It's difficult for them to think. They're feelers. They feel things. And so when you're thinking about stuff, their brains don't work that way. So for them, it's overthinking, because when we go back to what this term means, like how is this term being used? Wittgenstein will talk about the meaning of something is based on its use. I'm doing a class right now, so I'm proud of myself. When the cup overflows, it goes, the contents go beyond capacity. So if somebody has a smaller cup, their mind and thoughts go beyond its capacity, it makes sense to say overthinking. If your cup is bigger, you're like, no, I'm not overthinking, I'm just thinking. Right? If what you think doesn't make sense, right? That's a different thing. That means that there's like a crack in the cup and it's leaking. Or the contents in it is poisonous. Something inside the cup isn't good. Someone pissed in it or like dropped a piece of poop in it. Oh, that's not good. As beautiful as this ice cream may be, if you sprinkle some shit on the ice cream, I'm not gonna eat it. I don't care. Right? So the way we think about things is important. I know. Shit. Keep that with you. It's a funny one. Okay, so where are we here? Stand your ground. So multiple attempts fail. Yes. Right, we're gonna go back to that. So I have overexhausted that point. Right? We can see it now. There's certain ways of doing things. There's people that go contrary to that. And part of it comes from my approach to doing things this way is based in this mindfulness property that this movie talks about, right? Is to learn, it has to do with empiricism and rationalism. To truly be empirical means that you are determining things from your experience, not necessarily based in sense perception. Like my knowledge comes from my feeling of the wall or something like that. That we use conceptual clarity with that. It's knowledge from your experience, not from what people told you. And so the university and the students here, their lives are devoted to what other people say, because that's the only thing they know. And you can do that. We can listen to other people. Going back to this, I can say, I can go back, how do we think together? You can say something to me, you're an asshole. You're a piece of shit. Okay, what do you mean by that? What have I done to earn the title of piece of shit? Well, you didn't pay me back the money when you said you'd do it on Tuesday. So when you say piece of shit, you really mean, we're doing burn stuff here, you really mean that I was dishonest to you, or I lacked integrity to a commitment we made, right? But if you just kind of put your wall up and say, anyone that calls me a piece of shit, I will block them out. That just like, you can't see, the medium of the communication is poor. Yeah, the way they said it sucks a little bit. Sure. but there's a reason why. And making sense of it. If you're gonna be a philosopher, that is part of your duty. You have to do that. It's like saying a carpenter who doesn't use wood. No, I'm against it. Don't use wood. Like, what do you? Do you use concrete? No. Yeah, against concrete too. Now what are you gonna do? Do you use steel? No. Don't use tin, steel, or aluminum. What materials can you use to fulfill your duty as a carpenter? Right? So as a philosopher, what are the materials of the philosopher? It's how you think, or another way to say it, how you use your mind. Okay, going back to Dimitri's point here. Multiple attempts failed. So Dimitri's identifying standing your ground, right? The first one. What is your ground?
Your premise, right? Or belief.
Okay, yeah, we can talk about belief. What else can we talk about?
Belief is a premise, right?
Excuse me. There can be premises in your belief. Yes, for sure. Your beliefs are based on premises. Not everyone will be overly structured in a way that their premises are, that their beliefs are so explicit, but we can like distill it. Like we can take like, when they shake the soil or the sand to get the gold out, you can kind of do that. Right? You take your belief and kind of shake it out and find the kernels of truth in it, or the lack thereof. Okay? So when you say stand your ground, what else does that mean? So what do you mean? Which is the same, it's very similar to saying define your terms. Just another way to say it. You could say physical ground. So I'm like the dance champion, self-proclaimed. And like last night I was talking to somebody and she's like, that's me. It's a cute person. She's like, it's like champion. She's like, did you win? Like, did you win some award for that? And I was like, it was such an innocent question and it makes sense. And I'm like, no. The reward is like my territory. Like I held territory. She's like, what do you mean? I was like, well, as a man, when you go to the dance floor, two things will happen. Other men will try to push you around. They'll like test your fortitude, and men that are attracted to you will go in your space. And if you want that, then take it. It's there. If you don't want that, then you're going to have to navigate it because everybody will think that you do if you just stand there and accept it. Right? So there's a way to hold your territory. And I saw the book that on dating and attraction that is almost completely finished that I may publish soon is going to be probably called The Dance Champion, just for fun. Because it's fun. No one's ever written a book like that. So you're on the dance floor, here's all the people. And this is like the DJ. Dimitri's right here. Being cool. He's been there on this. And let's say that you stand, so we're in dance champion territory right now. This is good to learn. If you do this, you will find many partners for yourself.
It's a very primitive experience. Like attracting,
Look at this man right here.
Dancing. A lot of animals do that.
They do, yeah. Peacocks, birds.
Exactly. Mostly birds, I guess.
Some spiders do that.
I have a couple of them.
The dance floor is where you will find, this may not be true, but there's a possibility it is, your best match. And the reason, and the dance floor, if you didn't find them there, you bring them there to test them. You need to learn how to swim there first. You can't be taking someone in the canoe and be like, I have no idea how to use this thing. Do you? This is not gonna work. You need to have already gone there and learned the ways of that part of humanity. Because it's been with us for a long time, right? Because we were so excited when we got the fire lit. We would just start dancing around. Probably because we were cold, so we were moving. That's an explanation. And then it just became a dance with the heartbeat. We start dancing together, right? Or when you enter in psilocybin, people start eating mushrooms, right? And it becomes part of their cultural framework. Then the shaman will, after a kill or whatever, can give mushrooms to the people, they dance, they have sex, and then they have kids. That's great, right? But who are they having kids based off of? Well, there's going to be something involved in the dance. And there's predatorial mating, like with sexual assault and rape, so men can just go around and just, why are we going to do this? That's okay, yeah, that's a thing, not appropriate, right? It's part of the evolutionary thing. Because some women have gotten pregnant from it, and then there have been children, and then they have lived, and then their genes went on. So that's an evolutionary account. But on the other side, when a man dances, okay, and a woman feels him, she will present herself to him. And then that goes to the second stage of the courtship process. If you're going down the, I'm going to have children heterosexual pathway. Same thing would work in non-heterosexual ways. It's just that you're not going to end up with kids, because if you have sex, that's not how our biology works. So, yeah, anyways, the point is that when you're here and you position yourself in the center, so in herding animals, the alphas are always in the center. And on the periphery would be like the weaker animals, like for example, with gazelles, the cheetah would come and like take one of the smaller ones or one of the weaker ones and eat it, right? To be in the center of this, like, I don't know, I call it the globular cluster. Do you know what that is? Do you know what it is? What is it?
In space, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Is it a cluster of asteroids or a cluster of planets?
Stars,
Oh,
right? And the most gravity is at the center, and then it dissipates.
Exactly.
Right? And so this is a big deal. Like, it's important. This is me just figuring it out by observation, and then
Strongest in the middle.
yeah, the most gravity.
Exactly.
So when we talk about standing your ground, there's a physical sense of standing your ground. Like, I use my legs to grab the earth. And then when someone pushes you, do I go? For women, they're going to be interested in being with a man that can protect her, because she doesn't want those predatory men to grab her and do things to her. She wants to, like, consent is a big deal. She needs to be able to say, yes, I allow you to do whatever you want, right? Or within these parameters, you're allowed to do these things, right? And then if you want to, you do. And then you have a healthy relationship, right? So, and in some ways, the more beautiful the woman is, the more of a high value target she would be for the predators. And so she will need to make sure that she has a man who's worthy of her. That if it's just her and him and they're walking, like, if she wants to go out and do things, she may not feel safe being by herself. So part of the reason why she's attracted to a man and the mating exchange, she's, from her perspective, she's not going to explicitly say this, but I will allow you to fuck me if you can protect me. If you can protect me, do whatever you want, right? And if you can protect me, the probability of you being able to protect our offspring is higher, right? So this is a lot of coming from David Buss, he's an evolutionary psychologist. A lot of people will have major criticism towards what I just said. But again, if you want to criticize what I said, we can communicate about it, right? We can discuss the criticism. And the criticism will be based on defining our terms, our relevance, conceptual clarity, making sense, and what do we mean by what we say, and other things. This is not an exhaustive list. When you're here, standing your ground, some people will try to push you. Other people will put themselves in your space and you don't really want them there, right? And so in a hetero, it doesn't really matter what it is, but in any context, I'm speaking from a heterosexual perspective because that's what I am. If there's a woman that notices that you have rhythm and you dance to the music, right? These two things are in line. She will present herself to you. She will put herself in your space. It's not about going after a person. That's the predatorial problem. And young men, or men in general, can be confused by that, right? They say, I want this, I'm going to go get it. It doesn't actually work that way. It's a confusion. You can want the thing, but you have to be worthy for it. That's when we say be a good man, that's what that means. You need to be a good man. And the available women and the older women will screen you for that. If an older woman does a nonverbal cue that this man is not good, when the younger girl who doesn't have much experience, she will be gone. Because she trusts the tribe. That's part of our instincts. And that's good. Because if the man is not good and he can't take care of her, there will be problems down the line. It'll just be more problems, especially if children are in the mix. So it makes sense that the younger women listen to the older women who know, because they've been with a man for 20 years. Like, I've dealt with this. I've dealt with penises my whole life. I understand, right? That's her perspective. She's like, okay, she's like, honey, it's a thing. You got to figure it out. If you don't want it, fine. But if you do, this is what it is, right? And you want to find the best one for you. So standing your ground, and this is an example. I'm speaking at length because I know something about it. Standing your ground here means your physical space. Now the dance floor, as a thing, the information you learn from here gets generalized to all other physical spaces. What do you mean by that, kids? So when you're walking down the street, right, and there's people here, men will do they'll do this thing where like you're walking this way and this is like your space, and the other guy sometimes will veer into your space as he's coming right for you. And so when you talk about standing your ground, the first thing, okay, so standing your ground, first thing says, what is your ground? If he veered into your space, that's not his ground. He is trying to take territory from you. He is testing your dominance. Right? So when because they're talking about dominance, standing your ground. That was like that came from that, right? And so in the social animal hierarchy, it's not necessarily unhealthy that he did this, right? It depends on what happens here for it to be like this is inappropriate, But for you, you have to be able to sometimes brush arms against another dude, like literally hit your arms together or graze knuckles. It's a crazy thing. It happens. I don't know if you guys experienced this before, right? And it's my parents never. My dad never did it, by the way, son. My father said it to me. No disrespect my father in any way in this comment, but I would have become a better man if I learned this as soon as I went on the street. And if he had the mind to observe it happen to me, said, son, sometimes this is going to happen to you, and this is what you do. That's wisdom and good parenting. It's not about you, right? There's a dude walking this way. It's not about you going in front of him and then having a confrontation, unless it's a motherfucker and you're like a cop and you're taking that piece of shit down for whatever reason, or you see this person hit somebody or do something. Then you engage and you deal with it as a guardian of the city. Becoming a guardian of the city, that's the thing. It requires some training, mindfulness, stability, right? But there's a place for that. But it's not just you going around in a sociopathic context being the alpha by challenging everybody. Standing your ground is being on your path, right? Like looking ahead and saying, where is a space I can walk? And then you walk that space. If someone comes into your space, well, now I'm walking through you. Right? And this is part of the thing, is if psychologically from the beginning, if it was always your ground, then you will feel more secure in that space. If I'm going out to challenge you and I'm like walking into you, that's a little different. Unless I have a reason to do so, a justified reason. Like we have agreed that this person's a criminal, i.e. they did something really bad and we need to stop that from happening. Right? That's appropriate. There's a process and a method for that, and we have law enforcement to do that for us. But you can put people under civilians arrest as well. Right? You see something happen, you can do something. That's good for us. We want that. We want you to be safe, but we want society to be safe too. And if you can successfully do it in a good way, like being mindful of your use of force, be the hero. We need them. Right? Okay. So we can say more about that. So let's go back here. That's one property, physical space, like in public. So like walking down the street. Another example is the TTC or public transit, right? Find a place and you stand there. Now you can be an asshole, and if someone needs to get like by, you know, you can just be like, no, fuck you, right? And sometimes people will still, in an innocent way, try to push you around. And even women will do this. They'll like walk into your space because they're a bit more dominant, or maybe a psychopath, and they're trying to fuck with you a bit, which is like, okay, you know, like, and some women will test men in a way that they want to dominate all men. And we could, feminism could say, well, that's justified because of patriarchy and all these other kinds of things. Okay, whatever. I'm talking about the social hierarchy, right? When you go, like, maybe she, like, we could say, like, she has like an instinct for like a warrior woman as like a Jungian archetype, which is cool. We need warrior women. It's great. She can run into a building and save people. And she needs to learn to challenge dominant men. Because if there's a piece of shit dominant man, a predator, she's got to take him down. So it's okay. I don't look at them in a negative way, but let's just see it for what it is that person is coming into some kind of a challenging context, whether they're male or female, right? And some people will do this though in a weird way, that they're trying to push you around in an unhealthy context, because again, they came into your space, right? It could be an old person or a person in a wheelchair. Like, it's literally, I have had a dude in a transportation device, wheelchair, whether it's automated or not, like veer right in front of me, just kind of, I'm gonna just drive into you now. And it's like, they have this like sense of self-entitlement because society perceives them as disabled, and we have to respect their space and create like an accessible environment and respect diversity and the range of physical disability. I get that. But then some people will take that in an unhealthy way and then use it. There's a term for this, I forget what it is psychologically, and use it like to push other people around, right? And that's not really cool. Like, that's like, you know, you're using, like, that's not the purpose of being a disabled person, is to take advantage of other people because you're disabled. You know, and you can find this in like old folks' homes too. Like a person with like not Alzheimer's, but the person that's like deteriorating in their age will take advantage of nurses and stuff like that and get them to do things that are like a little bit like, no, is that necessary? You know, like, I don't know if that's necessary right now. You know, is that really what's going on here? I don't know. So what I'm saying is, it's not even like the most alpha people that will do it. There'll be people that are manipulative in kind of a deception way. They're using their people's perception of them from a societal context to push other people around. And that's a thing. And so what do? Just like run up and like kick the guy in the wheelchair in the face, be like, fuck you, you're fucking me. Obviously not. That's like not what's going on right now. Like, you kind of just concede. You say, okay, like what am I gonna say? You know? Because part of it is how other people perceive you. And even if it was your ground initially, if you stand there and then the wheelchair guy runs you over, you're going to get blamed regardless. Even if the guy's like trying to run you down with the wheelchair or whatever it is, you know, like this has happened. So you're going to say, okay, that's in their head. It's not you. So you let that, you like, it's like they're going in here and it's inside them. They're like, you know, and so anything that they confront, they're going to just do it with that. And then it may not work out, you know? And so you don't need to be the person to take the fall on that. That's just not in your interest. So you could concede. Those are moments of concession. It's fine. It's okay, fine. You're gonna be like that, fine. Or like an old woman who like just goes right in front of me. It's like, dude, there's a huge sidewalk here, right? This is not necessary. Okay. So physical space, standing your ground. So the first point is, what is your ground? Are you entitled to this space? Like on the dance floor, people know that I am standing there because I am actually dancing. I'm almost more than everybody else in a lot of cases. Dimitri's been there to see it. Yeah. So when somebody comes into my space, they knew that I was there. right? So that's the first thing. Second thing, so what other interpretations or meanings do we have from standing your ground?
Lots of water.
What exactly do you mean by like dancing? Just like moving up and down.
So dancing,
Okay, I'm just trying to understand the scenario. Like you're dancing there.
Yeah.
I don't know. You're just.
that's okay.
Okay.
Let's talk, what is dancing?
Okay.
That's okay. That's a great question.
I mean, I've been in that scenario. Honestly, I'm like the one person who doesn't do that kind of thing, unless I'm intoxicated. And then also you referred to. I'm just trying to go back to the dance floor point.
Mhm.
Like in terms of how that attracts women, right? I can understand standing your ground, especially if you're a woman and someone moves into your territory, right?
Mhm.
But you being there and just dancing, how exactly does that have any interpretation that you're a good or alpha male to another woman?
So if a woman perceives that other men can push you around, that means if she's with you, other men will push you around. And women attract attention from men. Men approach them, and there's the predatorial fucking case, right? So if you can't deal with yourself on your own, if she's with you, it actually will increase the amount of attention to you from men. And so if you can't deal with the being pushed around independently, how are you going to deal with it when there's other dudes around? Right? And so like a healthy way to concede territory is if someone taps you, just excuse me. Yes, of course. Right? But if someone just kind of like pushes you, you just need to be able to, it's a training thing of taking the force, right? That's the first thing. Dancing is, because when you're having sex, like if a woman orgasms, there's evidence that her vagina will suck fluids up into itself, and the probability of her getting pregnant is way higher. There's an evolutionary account of why female orgasm is there. And so a big part of when you're having sex is how to make a woman orgasm. That's what I'm talking about right now. Is being able to move with her movements. And so an artificial case, like to practice that, is can you at least listen to music and have rhythm with the music? Because if you can't have rhythm with the music, it's unlikely that you'll be able to have rhythm with me. And if you can have, the men that can have rhythm with me are more likely to get me to the stage of orgasming where we will have offspring together. The probability of that is higher. And so she will feel attracted to men that can feel her and vibe with her, move with her, right? When she doesn't want something, the guy's like, okay, sorry, whoa. That's very different than the predatorial man that like gets her and he's like, this is my girl. Like literally on the dance floor, this fucking guy, he was with one or two girls. I don't know if he paid for them to be there or what was going on, if there was drugs involved. So these girls, and they really liked me because I was doing the dance champion with them, because I was dancing, right? I was moving my body to the rhythm, and people can observe this, right? And she came really close to me and she wanted to be in my space because she just, sometimes when you're like, it may not go all the way to the point of sexual intercourse or whatever else, but girls that will dance with you on the dance floor, they just want to be with you. They want to dance with you. And what that means is that I'm looking at the person and we're moving together, right? Whatever that is, we're moving together. And it's, you can dance with guys in a non-homosexual way, which is fine. It's a little different than dancing with girls because it's almost like you're almost like fighting each other. You're doing it in a healthy way. It's like, it's weird. It's like the dance off. You can dance off. It's like sparring, but in a very like non-combative way, right? And dudes do this, and it's like a test of like, it's important because it refines you and it makes you a better fighter / dancer. And some guys will dance really fast, and then you'll be there with them, and you have to be able to dance in sync with the music and their movements. And this is who wins the dance off. The first person basically to go out of rhythm with the other person and the music loses. That means that the person who stays in sync, stays with the rhythm, and stays with the movements, they would be a better fighter. That's kind of where it's going, right? And yeah. With girls, though, it's different. It's slower a lot of the time, right? You want to create space for her to be in your space. You're not like flailing your limbs in such a way that she would get hit by you. And a part of it is there's two things. You can synchronize your dancing with her rhythm, or you can just dance like a champion, i.e. to the music to the best of your ability, and wait for a woman that is synchronized with your rhythm. And in a lot of cases, like, because when you go there, there may be no woman that actually synchronizes with you. Sucks for you that night, right? However, there's girls that you can synchronize to them, and that's great practice. You want to learn to dance with women. So instead of doing the dance with the guy, you're watching her movements, and then you're in some ways thrusting your hips at certain moments of the music and her body movements, and then she will like that. You will notice, you're not even speaking to anybody, by the way. This is all nonverbal. You will notice that she will come closer to you. She may even be with her boyfriend. This happened last night with her boyfriend, and put herself in front of me. And he's like, "What are we doing?" Because he knew I was there. And he's like, "I'm uncomfortable." You said this to his girlfriend. And she's like, "Okay, fine." And she took him over to their spot. Right? Think of it from an instinctual perspective. Like, let's go back thousands of years. There's the fire in the center. People are dancing. And the men, why do we get jealous? The men that are with a girl, and she is like, so there's like a dude, and the girl's right here, but she's with this guy. Right? But if there's a guy here, and let's say his penis goes inside of her, and he comes in her on the dance floor, okay, and she's all about it. She's like, "This is great," and he comes in her, and then her and her boyfriend go off to their hut, right? What happened? Cuckold, right in front of you, right? So it makes sense that we evolved the instinct of being jealous and being like, "No, you can't dance with other men." Why? Because if fucking something happens, then it's not my baby, and my genes are just extinct, right? So he didn't want that to happen. And it's not like in our culture and society, you're not seeing people, they may be in some clubs, but you're not seeing people just whip their dick out and they just don't start fucking each other. That's like, doesn't not where I go. That doesn't happen in those places. Maybe I just don't see it, and it actually does, which is awesome. You're like, yeah, you fucking penetrate the social boundary and just be an animal in an acceptable way. Not that I'm condoning public indecency, but I do have respect for people that have found love in an inappropriate place. Obviously no children around or whatever, but it's a dance floor. It's at night. It's like, whatever, I don't think it's hurting anybody. As long as you're not hurting anybody. Whatever. Anyways, your question was, what is dancing? Dancing is moving your body to the rhythm of the music. There are multiple like rhythms going on. Sometimes there'll be like a fast beat and there'll be like a slower beat. The shufflers, they're super fast in how they dance. Every like point or note of the beat, they do a body movement with it. Super high energy. There's a group of people that dance that way, but you can't do it for long. I'm an endurance dancer. I keep the beat and rhythm the whole time, from the beginning of the dance to the end. So the shufflers, I would argue, lose the dance champion thing because they stop. And they just get tired, they're exhausted. So you can shuffle for a bit, but you need to reserve some energy to keep on going. And maybe that's just a mating strategy. It's like the rabbit strategy. You fuck a lot really with high intensity, and then you just stop completely. You're just gassed up. And some people are into that. But that's not my dance style. And so certain girls won't be attracted to me. They want like the high intensity and then drop. That may be better for them, right? And so when I see a shuffler, I'm not dancing to that rhythm. That's like too much, right? It's for me, it's just, I'm a bigger guy. It's going to exhaust the shit out of me if I dance like that fast. So you want to pick out different rhythms and you move your body at certain points of these rhythms. You listen for it. That's how you dance, right? And there's going to be a neurological thing where your auditory perception is going to become more refined to these auditory stimulation and your kinesthetic body movements in sync. You have to synchronize these two things. It's almost like hand-eye coordination, like seeing a thing and grabbing a thing and being accurate. Like I can, whoop, oh, missed it. Whoop, there you go. I can touch the thing, right? And you can get better at it. So, and sometimes if you're not used to dancing, there just may be, you're going to feel uncomfortable. You're like, oh, I feel uncomfortable when I'm moving my body like this. It's actually just a warm-up period. It might take you like 2 hours for your body, like your nervous system, to just be kind of in sync with it. And it's also familiarity. Like if you, like, you know, like you might feel uncomfortable or shameful doing it around other people, right? That's where you said, if I'm drunk, I can do it. Okay, sure, yeah. But if you just do it often enough, you don't have to be drunk. I'll do little dances here. I don't give a fuck, whatever. No music, I'm dancing to the heartbeat. Yeah. Okay. Dancing?
Okay.
Okay. So standing your ground, right? Remember when you asked me today, what are we going to talk about today? What did I say?
How do you think?
Before that, you asked me.
Yes, so you said you're really not prepared for it, nothing,
I don't know.
nothing beforehand, and a random thing. And that's how you came up with that thing. What are you thinking about right now?
And look where we ended up.
Yes.
The beautiful place.
A lot of things.
I didn't say I wasn't prepared, because I am prepared. I just didn't have anything in mind. It was relevant to what you guys said and what was appropriate, what was appropriate to those topics, right? And everything that is prepared, I'm just throwing that in the bucket. It's like a new stew. Which veggies are in the fridge? That's what we're going to put in the stew. So standing your ground, we have your beliefs, physical space, and we went through a whole case study of dancing, what that means. I'm totally putting myself under a limbo about the dance championship, but it's fine. It's okay. People can get upset, and I challenge those people to listen, understand. I want valuable criticism, and maybe the literature is not observing the same phenomena as me. Come up with me, and you tell me what you see. Right? Let's look together. Right? Like I have a telescope. I'm like, that looks like a planet out there. Planet. Those are all balls of fire in the sky. They're all fire. Okay, maybe. Can you look in the telescope too? Well, it does look like a planet. Okay. Or it doesn't. Maybe my eyes have a problem. But in my anecdotal personal experience of observing this phenomena, I have observed these things. And so to really judge what I'm saying, you'd have to kind of come to look at it too. And then read some of the information, like the David Buss stuff. And he's gotten a lot of criticism, right, about this mating and sexual attraction stuff. I think I would really actually be interested in doing a PhD or a master's thesis on human attraction and dating about this thing. Because I do it so often anyways. I might as well just do a fucking MA and write a fucking paper about it, you know? Right? Because it'd be fun. I'm already doing it, you know? It'd be so on a different direction than everything else I talk about. Like doing a PhD in mental health, right? Like there's that. But then it's like, what about this? Because I'd literally be going out dancing as my research. And that's cool. Anyways, okay, so belief. That's something that you said.
Is that all masters is? Just an essay explaining.
So there's a literature review. You have to read a bunch of articles and stuff on the topic. You have to do courses. And then you're going to do a paper. About 40-ish pages, maybe a little bit more, maybe 60 pages.
So it's not just the thesis.
It's not just the thesis. It is a thesis, but then there's like
That's actually
there's like capstone. Yeah. All right. So when we talk about standing your ground, first, what is your ground? So if it's physical space, I kind of went through a whole bunch of stuff about physical space. Now you said belief. Okay, this is mental space now. And we're using space. There's an equivocation here in the term space. That means a different thing. In the mental space, standing your ground can be a bad thing. Because it can mean that you're arrogant. Right? So, mental space. So, we have the problem of arrogance. We have the problem of being credulous, right? The believing that you can't be wrong. You want to be incredulous. Yeah. So if you're incredulous, you're unwilling to believe something. So you want to have credulity. You want to be open to believing things. And sometimes what you'll get in like religious discussions is people are like, I will not even entertain the idea that God doesn't exist. Right? I said, well, nuts. You don't even put it in there. It's like someone saying, like a vegan, not even gonna, I will not taste that steak. I will not allow it into my mouth.
I don't know.
Right? And that's part of it is because they're scared that they may give up their belief in God. If I even contemplate that it's not real, oh, that's not good, because what if I didn't agree with it, then what do I do? Right? Or evolution, like an evangelical Christian. It's like, I cannot even think about the earth being billions of years old, right? So, we want to, it's not a specific belief content, right? So if you say, I believe, let's do an example of something that you believe, that you really believe. You don't have to do a religious exam, you do anything.
Belief.
Evolution that exists. It came from apes.
Okay,
I have a belief that democracy is not the best form of government.
very good. Okay, what was yours?
Philosophical belief.
Well, you brought this up. So is there a specific instance of standing your ground via your beliefs that you want to talk about?
I'm just going through religious aspects. But I think the totally first one that comes to mind is like Japanese cars are well engineered.
Okay, that's interesting.
Completely unrelated, but
No, it's fine. So beliefs. So one was evolution. 2 was democracy. And 3 was Japanese cars. Okay. So some people, like in every one of these categories, there's going to be someone who's very rigid about their belief. They're just like, I am standing my ground. It's part of my identity. These are all subjects. They are content. They are specific beliefs that you have. And you alluded to this earlier. Standing your ground when it comes to the mental space or our beliefs, it's if you stand your ground with a specific content, you will be stuck with that content. Right? And you won't be open to alternative viewpoints. And so what we want to do is we want to look at the process of believing, which is being philosophical again. It's going through this stuff. Standing your ground on defining terms by saying, what do you mean by that? Being open to being wrong. Right? I'm fallible. So one of the problems with the Christian institution is that they say that the Pope is infallible. The Pope can't be wrong. And that can lead to a whole bunch of issues, right? Because the Pope is a human being. And it's if you did like a case study on the Pope, I don't think it would take very long for the Pope to just say one thing that was incorrect. Right? Like the coffee mug is in the other room, or my keys are over there. That thesis is falsified instantly with mundane stuff. What we're really looking for, the best place to stand your ground, because why are we standing our ground in the first place?
Believe in it.
Sure. Why does it matter if you believe in it?
Because that surrounds every other belief you have in life.
This is very good.
And also, I guess there's some masculine feeling that you're able to stand something, and to just let it go to anybody, a very weak decision. It shows you don't have much integrity in anything, and that you're someone who will give in to anything, right?
So there's belief, and then there's like this interconnectedness of your other beliefs, right? Other nodes that they're connected to in your overall belief system. So for you to make sense as a person, you would want this to be sound, right? You're just not like a complete fool or just ignorant person. You're like, everything this guy says doesn't make sense. Like they're not connected at all. And I know some people like that. And I love you, buddy, but I honestly kind of disagree with 90% of the things you say. And I don't want to get into like unhealthy disagreement because, as a personality trait, if you're highly disagreeable, you can have problems of not having any friends. So you just have people argumentative there, right? And we had a criticism of other philosophy clubs or groups in the city. And the person said, well, the reason I don't like them is because they just argue all the time. They just disagree with each other, right? So part of their problem is they're stuck in this standing your ground thing in an unhealthy way, right? So for you to stand your ground in a justified way when it comes to your beliefs is fundamentally tied to how you believe things or how you use your mind and how you think. So for example, like let's say I've recently been going through some relationship turbulence as the captain of the ship or co-captain, whether we switch places, me and this other person, there's been some fucking turbulence. It's been a little tough for me. And for her too. And I love her regardless. And she's very upset with me right now. She said she hates me today, and that's fine. Maybe I deserve it. I don't know. Maybe she's upset and just coming from that place. I'm not sure.
It'll be better.
So part of it is if I assume I'm right in my relationship conflict, okay, maybe I am, right? But how do I know? So part of the belief thing comes to the epistemological property, is you may believe the Japanese cars are well engineered. And the openness to being wrong, that masculine, or even just like, I think integrity is, like, there is the masculine thing, and men and women can both have masculine traits, which is totally fine, right?
Yes.
We all do. We're all a little feminine sometimes and masculine.
Hmm.
The whole gender thing, I think, kind of gets a little confusing in some ways, and we can talk about that. But it's okay to be a little feminine and masculine.
Who's the one that spoke about the masculine and the feminine, the animus and the anima or anima?
Maybe young.
It was Carl Jung.
Yeah. How do I know what I believe is true? So my ability to approach it from this perspective is because I've taken several courses in epistemology. And so if you want to be a facilitator of the Philosophy Society at some point in the future, there's going to be certain courses at the university you have to take, right? So that you're prepared to respond to certain things. And I'm using this knowledge of knowledge, because epistemology is the study of knowledge. How do we know what we know? To make sense of what we're talking about right now, right? So epistemology is, well, how do I know if what I believe is true? And so some things we could say is like I think the person's attitude and their emotions and like the context in which we're talking, like evolution. Were you guys here when I told you the story about the old man from the first Philosophy Society that would go into the Baptist church and speak about evolution to them? And he would just communicate with them, right? And they would try to convert him. And he was, it's okay. And he would just talk with them, right? It's like, good luck converting him. That's not going to happen, but he'll be your friend, He'll disagree with you, but he'll be your friend. Sometimes, and I've been guilty of this, I've gotten into like unhealthy emotional arguments with people where I'm being an asshole, and I still do it to this day, obviously, sometimes, because I'm human. And part of me, I'm admitting that, and I want to be better. And I want everyone else to be better. I want them to learn how the frequency have dramatically gone down since I was younger. Obviously, that's a good thing. But we do it sometimes. And the example of my relationship conflicts, there have been moments where I got really upset, right? And so this is one of those things about the process. How I communicate with you and how I speak to you and the kinds of things I talk about. So if I attack you or if I say something that I know is just going to be hurtful, even if it's true, and because I'm hurting, and I'm like, well, guess what I have here? And then the effect of that is it causes you psychological suffering. Those things, we can agree, for everybody is not good, right? So when I talk about process, this is one of those elements that from the very structure of the Philosophy Society, how we run this organization, right? And how we interact with other people in the world, one of those anti-cult things. It's not about just us being together and excluding the whole world. It's how do we integrate with the world? How do we go out there and really live? Fuck, man. Because after this, we got to go out there. There's a door here. And I have to go out there and deal with, I don't even know, I could be killed by a variety of things or worse, you know? So let's take it and, you know, and deal with it, no matter what it is, right? And the way we do it is something that is not contingent to one person, right? That's that anti-authority thing. You can say, oh, it's contradictory that's me giving up the power. That's the whole premise of this organization, is to almost dispel. It's based on empowerment from a humanistic psychology perspective, but we're doing it in a philosophical way. And that's a solution to the problem of corruption in Plato's Republic, right? And I learned about this from one of my self-defense instructors. He said, when I teach you this thing, it becomes yours. And what you do with it when you leave here is up to you. You can hurt people with the stuff I taught you, or you can do good things. So he's giving the power away. If I put a gun in your hand, my finger's not on the trigger. You could shoot me with it. And so part of it is, I can't explain it in a logical way, and I want to develop this more, but because it seems contradictory to say that the exercise of, maybe there's a different thing than power. Maybe that's what it is. It's something, and the best word I have is empowerment, but maybe there's a different kind of thing. Because power seems very individual. But the process that I'm trying to do is like the antithesis to power. It's like a collective strength that doesn't give any one person strength over others, but it gives one person strength over the group. What the fuck is that? Because a tyranny is based on what? One person's power over the many. And what we're scared of is, and we talked about this before, is a mob that drags you and your loved ones away, nails you to a tree, and then burns you alive. And you can't do anything because you're outnumbered. That's not good. That's fucking bad. And so part of the reason that sorry, I'm just gonna respond to this person. Hey, honey. I'm just teaching right now. I'll call you back soon, okay?
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
It's okay. Love you, babe. Talk to you soon. Sorry, guys, I had to do that. You edit that out later. See?
Things are getting better.
The process, right? And so whenever you're in a relationship conflict, we can always agree that I will always make an effort to be loving to you. Even if I'm upset, okay? This is super important. Like, oh my God, it's important. Okay, so there's you and this person, and you guys have a relationship, right? The relationship is going over time, and there may be instances of conflict. There's a conflict, okay? Certain situations or events or something that somebody said. It is a mistake to think or to act in such a way that the conflict is the relationship. Not correct. What do you mean by that? You're going to use the method. You say, what do you mean? Achilles' response, right? The relationship is based on love, which is how we treat each other. And through that medium, we discuss the conflict. Right? So the mistake, okay, so how do we fuck this up? It's like, like, how old are you guys?
18.
Awesome. How old are you?
18.
Perfect. How old are you? Beautiful, right? I'm 38, so I'm 20 years older than you. I don't even really know what that means, you know? And 12 years older than you, right? You guys are my friends. I see you as friends, okay? And I have made a lot of mistakes from 18 and 26 to 38. And in my reflection of these mistakes, these anecdotal experiences, I've generalized principles from them that can be applied universally. So that's what this is talking about. So the way I interact with people can be from a pro-social, cooperative, loving context, right? When we look at game theory, You can be selfish. This is like independent of emotion, but it's important. You can have a selfish, self-interested approach to game theory. And do you guys know what the studies show on how to solve the game theory? You might know.
Well, I've heard of game theory before, but I don't know exactly what you're talking about.
Okay, so there's the prisoner's dilemma.
Okay, I've heard of it.
Yes.
When two people are in two separate rooms,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
And the probability sort of a thing.
Yes. I've heard
What
this
if
before?
So if both of them, both of them say that they've committed the crime, then they get imprisoned for 2 years each, sort of
Yeah,
like that. And
very
if
good.
they don't admit, so it's 5 years each. If both of them don't, if one of them, again, doesn't admit to it, while the other person does, there's something like that.
It's like 10 and 1.
Yes,
It's
exactly.
really bad.
Exactly. Yes. Actually, we studied that in economics as well.
Yes.
Few years back about cheat and non-cheat. I think that is called some sort of a graph or table. I don't remember that.
Mhm.
But yes, I get exactly what you're saying.
Okay, so in one instance, there's a probability that you may give up the other person, claim your innocence, and get 0 years or whatever,
Exactly. Yes.
right? But the other guy gets 10. So you fucking
Yes.
lie and tell him that he did it,
Snitch on him, yeah.
and he's a good guy, he's your friend. He's like, I would never betray my brother. And then the officer comes in and says,
You never know.
you're going to prison for 10 years. What about my friend? He's innocent. And you're like, what? No, he's not. Well, we don't believe you. Right?
But
So what happens is this example is artificial in some ways, right? Because life is not usually just one instance where there's one event. And this goes back to standing your ground too. It's a process point. Is that I have one argument with you and I never see you again, right? And even if I never see you again, I may see somebody who I argue about the same thing and I'm learning some way of interacting in that argument. For example, when I speak to Jehovah's Witnesses or evangelical people outside, I'm like, I have nothing to do right now. I'm gonna argue about religion for fucking 20 minutes, for as long as you can handle me, like.
that's
And-
what I do nowadays. Best place, it's Young and Diaspora. Yeah, Muslims, Christians, everyone there.
Yeah, it's great, except for like some Buddhists and Hindus. We gotta get everybody present.
Exactly, yes. I met some Orthodox people the other day. Mostly of Catholics, Orthodox, and Muslims. Although I'm a Muslim myself, I love arguing with the Muslims as well.
Good. That's good. That's beautiful, bro. I want you to do that. I want all Muslims to be able to just discuss it.
Exactly.
So in one instance, it may be the case that probabilistically you do win out and you get 0 years. It's a win, zero-sum game,
Yes.
right? So you're successful. The psychopath wins. Ha, 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 I fucking got you. The narcissist is like, I'm the best. I won again, right? And then Batman's like, yeah, guess what? I'll see you tomorrow, or the day after, or the day after. And over time, right, the best outcome is to work cooperatively. Because if you learn that I'm going to betray you, what are you going to do next time? You're like, fuck that guy. Well, that's why they say there's no honor among thieves. Because if my approach to the world is to steal from everybody unanimously, then you're going to steal from me and I'm going to steal from you. Right? And so how do we trust each other? We can't. Because if I steal something, I'm like, I have this. And I go over here and my friend's like, who's a thief, whose belief is I steal from anybody, as long as it's good for me. I'm going to let you steal the thing and I'm going to wait. This is the great heist movie. We can have like a list, like if you have a movie critic, be like, oh, there's like 52 movies. I'll go through all of them with you, right? If these kind of example, right? And the theme of the movie really is that being a thief is not correct, the moral lesson, because once you steal it, then your friend, who's also a thief, steals it and maybe kills you, right? So being cooperative is the solution. Why did we get the prisoner's dilemma? I don't know. Anyways, let's go back here. Okay, so that's the short answer to the thing here. So when we're looking at belief, okay, so I can try to win the argument in this instance in an uncooperative way, because what's more valuable to me is maintaining my belief, or like it just doesn't really matter why I'm holding on to it. There could be a psychological disposition, right? The person's brain works, some brains are like that. They're very rigid. It's really hard for them to disengage from things because of the way it's wired. It's difficult, almost impossible, right? So there's that category of people. But when we just discussed the reasonable person who has the regular functioning brain, okay, what are the reasons for them to be like this? Part of it is there going to be an emotional component. Like, why do you hold on to your belief? The other part is the network of your belief. You talked about that. The emotional component, I'm going to say, is the masculinity thing. Just going to throw it in that bucket. The other thing is your social network, right? If you said that, guess what, everybody? Like, if you to truly believe something, and you talk about this, it's part of your identity, right? It means that I go out in the world and I say I'm an atheist. And then I deal with, my belief means that I'm willing to hold my shield and go through all of the shit from society to adhere to that belief. So if you have the belief like eating babies is okay, you can eat, if you have 4 babies, you can eat 3 of them, and that's your culture. You're like, this is all right. It's all right. Maybe in some areas of the world and life, that form of cannibalism and infanticide was just super necessary to survive, or parts of our history. But in our society right now, we're like, that is insane. But let's say that that person came to our culture and they believed in it. The ethical relativists would be like, that's okay, which is fine. We can listen to what they have to say and go through our method. And that person, to truly believe in it, is going to have to listen to all of the reasons why it is not justified to eat 3 or 4 of your babies as a standard rule. I'm obviously picking like a reductio ad absurdum, like an easy case that, you know, is fucking craziness. But again, the ethical relativist would stand there and they would say, who are you to judge that person's way of life? And we have a response to that, okay? About objective ethics and morality, applying principles within a social context, right? In this environment, it's not appropriate, right? If the entire tribe and all humanity is going to die, then we have a utilitarian problem, trolley problem. Maybe that's the case. Don't want that to be the case, though. Super terrible. Well, hopefully society moves beyond that, right? Oh, and in the Nicomachean Ethics by Aristotle, there's a point where like they talk about, oh my God, talks about like these like witches or older women that like eat the unborn infants out of younger girls. So insane. This is in Aristotle. When I read that, I was like, oh, that's never getting out of my brain now. Like that, I was like, dude.
Thank you.
So I know, I'm sorry about that.
Aristotle wrote that. He wrote that.
Yeah, in the Nicomachean Ethics. He said that there are those people that do this. He was talking about how to live your life in a healthy way. So apparently at that time in Greece, that was something that did occur. Just taking what he's saying on face value, right? And that just seems so beyond us. But humanity, as our evolution has got and the development of civilization, right? We don't have to do that anymore, right? The predatorial men that rape women so that we survive as a species, we don't have to do that anymore. We can have healthy consensual relationships, which is a beautiful thing, right? It's better that way. Why? Because she feels good, she feels safe. She's not terrified of this man, and then they can raise the baby together in a healthy way, and the baby can develop and be a healthy child, right? That's what we say to that psychopath. You go into the prison, you say, well, why did you do that to her? Because I can, and whatever fucking crazy, stupid shit that they say, right? And then we could respond with that. But it's not if their capacity is there, and maybe a lot of those criminals or those who have not been criminalized yet, they just don't have the capacity. Their brains don't work the same way, right? But that would be the rational response. One, you could say. Okay, so in your belief system, there's the content, okay? There's a social pressure. So when you go out in the world, if you say, Mom, Dad, I don't believe in God anymore, give it up. Some people will disown you, never talk to you again. I changed my name 8 years ago, and my biological family is very upset about it. They take it as a personal attack to them, many of them. I understand why, but that wasn't the reason why. And the ones that are upset are not, remember I said that you can't entertain the ability to taste the food? You can't even hold that belief, that possibility in your mind. They will not even really listen to me when I explain why, because it was for my own psychological health. Now, someone with antisocial personality disorder, if you want to criticize me in that way, say, well, do you have a psychological disorder? You change your name. Achilles Justice, what is this, right? That person is using many names, pseudonames, as a form of deception, sometimes for like credit card fraud or like other crazy things, right? I don't like to talk about the old name because I changed it for a reason, but I'm honest about it. It's not about deceiving people. It's for me. And if you're my friend, you respect that. It's so simple, right? But my family has, in some ways, disowned me because of a belief. So there are many reasons, many people that are like, they would never say this, right? They can't change the belief because part of it is that social thing. They say, well, if you really got down into a cave and no one can hear you, do you really believe in God? And then you come back out, they're like, oh yeah, of course, whatever, it's fine. Oh yes, it's fine, right? And it's like, for me, that's sad. So when you say standing your ground, part of that is having the strength to at least say, I do believe in this, but then the next foot is, can you please explain to me why it's incorrect? And that goes back to our epistemology. Is the belief true? And what's the answer to this? Have you taken epistemology yet?
No.
Next year, you'll be like Achilles, because you'll have taken the class, right?
Maybe.
Maybe.
No.
So then there's problems with this. My conceptual philosophers will say Achilles Brown. There's no such thing as truth, and they'll disagree with me. But in a pragmatic context, for our purposes of living well, we can talk about it this way. Is true justified belief, right? And plus maybe tack on one more technique to rule out the conceptual issues, like a social feedback criticism methodology or multiple definitions. How do you know something is true? Is the motive or the means of justification, right? So you say democracy is the best form of governing, right? Or Japanese cars are the best engineered. And so we'll go with, because this is Dimitri's first example, so we'll go with him. So you believe something. Do you believe in it?
I do believe it.
So that's the confidence. That's standing your ground. But now I want you to, so there's standing your ground. Now let us be wise. Why do you believe in it?
Through the passion that's built behind it and the precise tolerances in engineering, more strict compared to other manufacturers around the world.
Okay. So I'm going to let's do it in order. Passion. So the Audi is a German-made car. What would the Germans say to you about that first point?
No.
I have German, my grandmother's German, so.
Two Germans in Europe.
I'm not German. German is part of me. But I'm many things. So the Germans would say, "Are we not passionate?" Right? Germans are not Nazis. So let's just throw that out of there. Are we not passionate? Right? As good as my grandmother, I've modeled her accent. And then what does the Japanese say?
Except for that one.
A lot of reasons.
Different kind of passion? Okay, so there's different types of passion. Okay, so what are they? Just quick meta point. Notice the method. How am I going through this? I'm talking about stuff, but just see how we're doing it. You believe in it, that's standing your ground. But does the ground exist? And wisdom is being able to figure out if it's true.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're going through this now. Passion and tolerance. Okay, so passion, there's different types of passion. What are they?
One can be a passion for speed.
Okay.
Or one passion of comfort,
Speed, comfort,
control.
control. So No, I'm just
So
gonna,
each car, each manufacturer prefers or has their own strengths in certain areas that. Passions, I guess.
so do you really mean, exactly, do you really mean passion?
I don't think I mean that.
Okay, so that's actually not, so using.
Like, I do, but like not in those contexts.
Okay, so passion may be a different thing, but it's not these
The
things.
care that's put into the car.
Okay, care. And then what does the German say again to you?
Not-
Do I not care?
They do. I believe that
Okay.
German cars are very well.
Germans care. Oh,
Japanese. I mean,
do the Americans care?
I don't know. They used to, I would say.
So an engineered Ford, he's like, hey man,
But back then they used to care about their cars, not about plastic and, about profit.
okay, so we can talk about that, right? The materials being used, but maybe they say, well, we care about having,
More money,
but making it cheaper for the customer.
but they don't.
Okay, so we can talk about that. That might be the position. Whether they do it or not successfully is a different thing. Okay? All right. So do you see where we're going with this? Okay. So I am asking him, how did I do this?
Why he believes in it. What is the basis of this belief?
Very good.
And then you just went through the basis and argued if it's true or not. You examined them.
Mhm.
And that's it.
And you just keep on going.
Yeah, so keep on going. Why?
And then one of the other techniques I did was because he said that the Japanese have this property. So I went externally to have other
Example.
cultural groups or ethnicities that also do the same activity. And I said, does the property exist for them? Right? So for example, so if it's deductive, it means the property is always necessarily part of the category. Right? If you are Japanese, you are from Japan or have an ethnical link to Japan. Right? But having care, is it necessary to be from Japan or an ethnical link to Japan to have care towards what you manufacture?
With the admiration.
Okay. So the point is that it might not be care, like you could say care, but it may not be care specifically. There might be some other property that is not really distinct of, like, why is it that Japanese cars are made in the way that they are? Like somebody is making a decision, right? And it may be a historical fact, the development of how cars were made there. Like there's maybe something that is distinct from German cars, and there was a split. But we wouldn't want to say it's because it's the people themselves. The reason is because now we're getting into like discrimination and stereotyping, right? And so we don't want to go down that road because, like I said, the German would say, hey man, I care. You know, what are you talking about? Look, I get up every day and I go to this place and my boss, Jim, is an asshole to me and I don't quit the job because I care, because I want to manufacture cars or I'm passionate, whatever you want to say, right? So we don't want to attribute it to certain, we want to find out what the true property is and if there is a difference. So you said using plastic, right? Like fiberglass. And part of the reason in the development of automobiles that fiberglass has been used externally is because it's safer for the driver. When they get into an accident, it explodes and it reduces, it absorbs a lot of the force of the impact, right?
My knowledge, they used to use fiberglass as body panels. Now they just use PVAC,
Okay. I don't say that. I'm speaking to the plastic point.
like internals. And
Okay.
I was looking, can go to cavity.
So that might just be like cost efficiency, maybe, you know? And then when it comes to, and it could be a profit thing. And then the student of the MBA who works for, Toyota or wherever, Toyota's Japanese?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was like, I had to like think for a second. I'm not a big car guy, so I'm doing my best here. They would say, if the company makes more money, okay, so I guess it would be American Cars, Ford. If the company makes more money by making parts cheaper, and our profits go up, that means we can reinvest in the company. And as the company grows, we can provide a better service to you, to the customer.
No, but at what cost?
For this car,
For like-
50,000.
No, not in that sense, like from making the parts cheaper and you have to take something else out from another area, like the quality, for example, or the materials.
Compromise.
Yeah, correct. So I believe when you compromise that, you lose the quality.
So maybe you could make an argument that the desire for profit for specific companies, I wouldn't just say Japanese companies entirely,
Say
maybe
modern
specific,
cars, I'd say.
just the values of the company. I think it's better to talk about the company, not the country where it comes from, right? But this specific order, because another company could come in the United States and they're like, they have all the things that you're talking about, right? You can say Ford's not good, Chevrolet's not good, but Dimitri is the best cars, right? And it's the best because it has all these things. And they took all the lessons, the wisdom of these specific Japanese companies and they implemented it in their own, right? Okay, so let's take a couple steps. I know you guys are getting like restless. I'm just trying to complete the, you okay?
Yeah.
Okay, you okay? I don't want to go too long because then I feel like it's like, you're like, oh, fuck this guy, he's talking too much, I'm fucking leave. Like, you know?
No. We're enjoying this.
Only with my entrepreneurship teacher.
Yes, okay, so when we talked about standing your ground in the mental space, we have some issues to be careful of, being arrogant, being incredulous, right? I'm unwilling to give up my belief. And there's reasons why people will do that. Cognitive capacity, that's a theme that comes up in this, with what we talk about. And that is respecting diversity, cognitive diversity. That there are people that, some people are not good at math. Why? Well, because their brains, they're not able to. Or there's something going on in the family and they can't focus in class. Like there's reasons why that person can't do it. Their capacity is depreciated. I'm pretty good at math. Yesterday in my marketing class, the TA who was doing her master's in finance was teaching a thing. And there was apparently, I discovered a new way to solve the problem using the equation. And I'm like, and she's like, you got the right answer incorrectly. I'm like, did I? And I'm like, variable cost, price. I plugged them in. I got the correct answer. I'm like, you just can't see. And she's teaching me. You just can't see that it can be done this way, actually. There's another way to do it, right? She used a different equation, got a different sum, and then used it. It was a longer way. Same answer, right? And that's no disrespect to her. It's just that maybe I have more training when I was in high school or whatever. My cognitive capacity as I was younger, I was able to put things together. We can talk about it. Gardner talked about multiple intelligences. And there may be different people that are more inclined to certain patterns in the cosmos, right? Like being the dance champion. Become the dance champion and tell me of what you learned, right? and it's like the way, kinesthetically, the way you move your body. Like I did martial arts for 10 years. So I developed this kinesthetic sensitivity with my body, right? And then I do music. And so those two skills, there's almost like synesthesia. I combine them together to dance. Not in the sense that like I can see see 3 as a color or smell number 3, not in that sense. It's like making a metaphor, synesthesia. So standing your ground in the mental space, part of it is being assertive and dominant, that you will not let other people push you around, intimidate you based on your beliefs. And if some motherfucker is going to kill you for it, unless your belief is like, I'm going to kill people or I'm going to hurt them or sexually assault them, then obviously there's something going on there, you know? But if your belief is like, God doesn't exist, there you go. Just like throw it out there. Whoop. And that will get me killed. I was like, hey, by the way, like the alarms would go off and it would be like, oh, we need to remove this property from our current social environment and make you suffer so no one else does it, right? So that's one way to deal with problems. But so standing your ground, one thing is being confident and saying, and then the second step, so you can stand, but then there's the wisdom part. and in some ways intellectual maturity, right? And when you talk about this car discussion with your friends, you can engage in this way and then discover, because some people that have worked on these vehicles and really know, they can say in the 1952 car or in the 2013 car, wherever it is, right? This specific piece was an issue and that was a problem for the company. We need to have an evidence-based evaluation. Don't blame the people of the United States of America because some guy made a stupid decision on a cheap part for the car, right? Get the people of the United States to be like, hey, don't make cheap fucking cars with our name on it because it makes us look bad. Do your job, right? But you need to have you need to formulate your argument in such a way that's based on evidence, that the premise is true, right? So we go back to so A, then B, B, then C, C, then D, right? If it is the case that the Ford Pinto had a gas tank at the rear end and caused people to burn alive in the car when it was hit with, when they got rear-ended, then it's a really shitty car. It is true that that occurred, therefore it is a shitty car, right? And it's based on a specific property of that car. And the company, Ford, this is if you want criticism, it's not criticism. To recall the cars would have cost more money than when they got sued by the families of those people who were burned alive in the car. Like imagine if you're on the Gardner, okay? Let's just like, here's a car, here's a car, here's a car. And then you're in there with your kids and your beautiful little wife. You love her so much. And then this guy is just tired and just bonks your bumper. And then the bumper, the gas tank is right here, punctured the gas tank and there's friction. And then now you're inside the car, you're seat belted in, and it starts burning like crazy. This is a case of business ethics. And the corporate individuals at the time, they said, statistically, the amount of people that this happens to is relatively low. And to recall the cars would cost us, just for numbers, 100 million. To pay out the families that sue us in court will cost 10 million. Therefore, we're going to let these few people burn alive. Ford Pinto. So it's not Ford, like you could say it's this Ford, like it's the people that made that decision. I wouldn't even blame Ford. I would say that group of people in that room had a cognitive bias called groupthink or a social bias. And they just like the Challenger, the spaceship shuttle that blew up, because there was like these what was it? There's like a fucking part in the spaceship, and it like there was like condensation or something like that at certain temperatures. It wasn't very good, and then it just when it was lifting off, it exploded. Right in the O-rings or something. Look into it. Anyways, people died. And when they observed the safety committee for this Challenger spaceship, what happened is some people knew that there was a problem and tried to voice their opinion. But the problem is like in social groups, we have this tendency to agree, which goes back to that social problem of the belief, right? That some people are like, I can't disagree because I don't want the group to ostracize me. I don't want the group to kick me out. And our instinct for that is in the tribe. If the big jacked hunter drags back a gazelle, it's like, I have killed this. Now we will eat. Right? And you're like, and then he slaps his woman. You're like, hey, bro, don't fucking hit women. He's like, oh, yeah? I will slap you. And then he throws you off the cliff. Huh? Right? Is might right? Right? It is just because, like, the fact that you have power indiscriminately of how you use it, is it just? Right? So we have this instinct to be like, well, I could tell the big alpha to not be physically abusive to his women, but then I might get killed, or he just won't even let me eat and I'll starve to death. We have developed this instinct to not say stuff when we know it's fucking wrong. Like when we go back, hey, there's a cable here. There's someone down there who wants to tell you something. Right? Doesn't tell anybody else. Why? Because you don't want your family to never speak to you again. Not because it doesn't make sense. Just because my family respects me. They're like, he's a great boy. He's a good girl. Believes in God. Has a good job. But if they me, my family's like, oh, Achilles. Not only is his name Achilles, but he's an atheist. You know, and he's gotten upset in the past. Right? When we use the methodology, we're applying to behavior is a different topic entirely. But a quick point on that is when someone does something, we want to use the same properties of evaluation as if it was a belief. Why did you do it? And for you to tell me the truth, there's certain properties of the social that will make it more likely for you to tell me the truth, like safety. So in the relationship discussion, you always want to do your best that no matter what your partner says to you, you don't freak out and get upset. Listen to it and then say, that is really hurtful. You're breathing, you're monitoring your heart rate, you're making yourself calm. First priority is being calm and then communicate what's going on. Because if you lose control of yourself, they will feel unsafe. In this context, if it's or it doesn't really matter who it is, but if it's a woman, that's bad. Right? Men might be like, well, fuck you. If you're a couple gay guys, they're like, oh, fuck you. And they're just going to yell at you. Right? But a woman, it's different for her. Most often, she's usually smaller than the man and a bunch of other things. Right? So you exercising emotional stability, especially when you're in a fight, is a big deal for her and everybody else. If you start sending motherfucker, piece of shit, asshole text to her, guess what can happen? She's like, Mom, look what he said to me. And if you get, remember I said before, if the other women, the elder women, disapprove of that man, like all of your efforts, you've been climbing this relationship mountain and you're right at the top, and then you get knocked all the way down. And then there's a barrier. So you have to climb around the barrier of the mother and you have to climb back up again. Good fucking luck. Just don't do that. What is the philosophy of love wisdom? It is unwise. It is unwise to be emotionally unstable. You can be upset. And even if you have like a spike, you know, there's like an outburst. Oh, I got upset. Then this is the wisdom thing. It's part of training and practice. You take yourself away. It's really useful going for a walk, somewhere where there's some trees and you can smell oxygen and shit. Until you've calmed down and you can see stuff. And then you lose the right to be in your home when you're pissed off. Unless it's something crazy like she brings home another man. Okay, leaving then is not appropriate. You exit on your own free will, or the police will come and get you for trespassing. You're not welcome here. This is my home, you're not invited. I did not consent to this, right? And it works the other way too. And then you go back and then you say, this is what occurred. You need to be mindful and say, I got upset because of what you said here or what happened. And then you can say it in a healthy, responsible way. And if she or he or whoever is a mature, healthy person, right? They can say, okay, I understand. I see how my behavior elicited that reaction in you. I'm grateful that you took care of yourself. This is like super like mature. And I'm going to make an effort to not communicate or behave that way because I don't want to hurt you. Right? That shows the person cares and they have self-awareness. Too big a deal, right? So, in these different cases, your relationship, right? Even though I'm in conflict with this person, as soon as they called, I said, I love you. Are you okay? I am busy right now, but the way I'm interacting with that person, and that's why she called me. Right? Even though she's very upset about some things. There's some things in there she's upset about. But this is the most important thing. That is what you are with the other person. That is what the relationship is. And the relationship is the thing that goes through the conflict and out of it. If the conflict ends the relationship, well, then you're done. That's just what it is. And it's not to say that you allow people to, you don't necessarily have boundaries, you're not assertive. It's that I'm going to tell you what's a problem and I will redefine our relationship based on how we are together, based on this trajectory. Like whatever happens here will be like the type of relationship and other properties. Like, do you live with me? Am I going to see you? What are we going to do together? Right? And that's important. How we make each other feel is a big deal. Right? So it's the mode. It's how you're interacting with each other. And with the contents of your belief. Like, taking care of yourself, making sure you eat properly and do these things is important so that you are stable. If you don't eat or you have problems and shit like that, then you may be reactive and may act in a way that's not good. And that's not healthy for you. You won't be able to do these things. So part of the philosophical method, there's this notion of self-love, man. That you can't do that. You actually can't do it, then that means someone else is taking care of you. Or you're like homeless and you're just suffering all. And that sucks, right? If it's not the case, your cognitive capacity is such that you can take care of yourself. That is what it means to be an adult. And there are people that are my age that you could say you don't really have, like, you're not that much of an adult right now because you're not taking care of yourself. So part of it is hygiene, diet, emotional management and emotional awareness, social health, which is a huge fucking topic, boundaries of people, understand, knowing what's good for you, and then associating with people that enhance that goodness in you. Your friends are the ones that love you for who you are and want the best for you. And in any way they can, they will help you get there. That's it. If you're around somebody that is around you because putting you down makes them feel good, and they say you're friends, I mean, they do shit for you every now and then because they just like to have you around because fucking with you makes them feel better. That kind of narcissistic, whatever person, they're not your friend. You can be their friend, maybe, but their conception of themselves and relations to others makes it almost that they can't be friends with anybody. Why? Because they use them as a means to an end, which is a Kantian principle ethically, right? That's one of our tools. And they're being malicious. Immanuel Kant, German philosopher, says, only use people in a way that they would want to be used themselves. Respect them as an end in themselves. Don't lie to people and manipulate them and deceive them. That's not ethical. Dimitri, what does it mean to stand your ground?
I have a firm belief.
Is that it?
Basically, everything after comes from your belief and your points.
How do we stand our ground in a healthy way?
Using logic and reasoning,
Mm-hmm.
being more moral than ethics, in fact, not being emotional.
Mhm.
That's how I got this night.
That's good. Is there value in believing something that's not true?
Sorry.
Is there value in believing something that is not true?
No.
How do we ensure what the ground we stand on is real?
So logic, reasoning,
That's good. That's yeah. Sorry.
facts,
Evidence. Yeah. Very good. Yeah.
reoccurring. We were talking about that.
Mm-hmm.
What are those called?
Okay.
I'm just going to say, in order to ensure what you're saying is true, you also cannot have a complete front. You can't completely stand your ground, right? You also have to believe, or understand the other person's point of view.
This is a different point. Very good point.
Flip that with your own.
Yes.
So,
We have to add that. Just put empathy. Okay.
so in general, when it comes to standing your ground, it is that your beliefs have to be backed by evidences and facts based on logic, rationally correct or historically correct, in whatever sense they must be correct. But at the same time, you must not be emotional, must be willing to understand the other side, and always allow discussion and deliberation listen to others. Is that it? Is it?
Sorry, I didn't ask the question that you had your hand up like 10 minutes ago, and I'm sorry for that.
Okay, well, I'm just going to touch upon this, and I guess I can talk about that. But I actually think this also has to do with sort of you as a German Audi car manufacturer, right? You weren't saying, without a doubt, we're more passionate. You're saying, well, we are passionate too. How does that make you more superiorly passionate than we are? Right? So, yeah. What I was talking about earlier, which is kind of like random, but had to do with what you were talking about. Hold on, let me try to remember this. In terms of standing your ground, like in a relationship, and okay, let's say you're in a male-female relationship at this point, and this kind of has to do with you taking the call, right? Let's say you were to get into a conflict with someone, and they were a female in your relationship with them. Would you be waiting for them to call you? Because let's say you were to call them, you sort of give away that level of respect, right? Sort of, maybe it's less masculine that you called them first, and maybe they'll have less respect for you, and the power dynamic shifts.
Like admitting that you were wrong.
Yes, before they do. And I'm talking particularly in a female-male setting.
Mhm.
I feel in a male-to-male setting, like it's kind of both your job, but also inevitably the person who calls first is kind of on the lower end of the spectrum, but they also
Yes.
realize that had they not called, they'd ruin the relationship potentially, because no one would call.
I haven't been in these situations. I think he's very correct.
In a female setting, though, I
Indeed.
feel like
I think this applies to every relationship.
I feel like it's a
rather
lot
than you.
different in a female setting, because if you do call first, it's like,
It is,
you know that if the female does not call you, then that just means she doesn't care. And that's not a very good
It
relationship.
is far greater in magnitude when it comes to females, but to a certain extent, I believe it applies to every single relationship in the sense of friendship or any other thing as well. That if the other person calls, it is sort of like he's admitting that he was wrong, and
Mhm.
he in a higher ground sort of a thing in that friendship or relationship. That's what happens most of the time. I've been in the force though. I maybe know about how it goes most of the times. Yes, and I think it applies for every single thing.
okay, so I wouldn't worry about who calls first. If you legitimately made a mistake or caused harm, it reflects on your integrity and your awareness / maturity to accept responsibility for that. So that's a good thing. If the other person is looking for the kind of relationship, if she wants to be with an arrogant man, you don't want to be with her. That's just actually a problem. If you're being needy, right? If you're not being a man in the sense that you need her to exist and you're going to forfeit your own integrity, and like if she made a mistake, you can call her and say, hey, are you okay? I'm willing to discuss what happened. That's one thing. And you called first. That's good, actually. But if you call and say, hey, baby, I don't care what happened. It's fine. I just miss you. I love you. I can't be without you. That's not good.
That's weak.
Yes, that's or needy,
Yes.
right? Like you're foregoing your integrity because you can't live without her. That's not, you're not a man in that sense. You're not an adult, whether it's a woman or a man doing it.
But how do you show the other person the difference between the two? Because you're kind of saying the same thing. No?
I think what you said is quite correct. If you can communicate it in a better way, at the first, right? It can sound like you're being weak or emotionally weak and you need them right now, but at the same time, if you frame it in a different manner, it might also appear as if you're being more dominant, being more mature, and understanding that you want to sort these out, these issues out with a conversation, and you can talk to each other and sort everything out. So I think it
Yeah.
depends upon how we communicate this thing to the other person.
Very good. So you can't control other people. You have like, it's just, is she the right one for you? And this is, I would look at it as a test of her. If she can't see that I am making an effort to be constructive and pro-social and come from a loving place to resolve things. Whenever we have a conflict, it's just going to be a problem. But if you approach it and you disregard her bad behavior, like if she slaps you or throws something at you or suffering from like an addiction, if she has an addiction and she says, baby, I'm sorry, I know I have a problem, like I really want to get help, that's one thing. If she says, fuck you, I'll do whatever I want, and you go, okay, baby, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have said anything. That's not good. That's bad. Whether it's a man or a woman, doesn't really matter who it is. Women have an instinct, more so than men, to eschew or dispel men that are needy. Because the child needs her. You shouldn't. You need her so you can have children with her. You shouldn't need her because she's not your mother. She's your girlfriend or wife or fiance or whatever. Right? So there's a difference there. And they will not like men that are like that. It's important. You can talk about what hurt you and what upset you, but even if someone else hurts you, as much as they hurt you, it's up to you to heal yourself. So you get hurt, and then you take space and heal yourself, right? And then you go back and get hurt again, and you just give them this cycle over and over again. And then you can say, okay, it's fucking like, you say some shit, fuck with me, it takes me 3 days to feel better, and then in a week you do it again. Do you want to be in that kind of relationship? The answer is no. Self-love is the first property. No. It's not other love, it's self-love. You can't have other love as the fundamental property because you are not the other. You are the self. The beings you perceive that are external to you are the others. But the perceiver and the you is the self. That's a fundamental property of our existence. And so we get confused sometimes because of the meaning that others may have to us. Okay. I think we're done for today. This is a very good day. Any final comments? So I'll do a quick summary. I improv this whole thing based on you guys being here. And so as like an introduction to what I'm doing, I just start off with one of the fundamental things. What do you guys think? Because you could have said, oh, I think that Trump is an asshole or Trudeau sucks. And then it would have went in a totally different direction, right? So what I talk about is not a premeditated curriculum because that's actually contrary to how I want to do things here. I have things I've already thought about and I include them and connect them to what we're talking about in the moment because I believe you'll learn more. It's true that you learn more if you'll remember more if you can connect it to your own life and your own self. And so I just start from there based on who's here and what you guys already know, right? What do you think? And then we talked about being descriptive and being normative. And then we talked about, and then we had a little case study of the dominance thing coming in. A great case study, we talked about that, right? In the moment, it's like real time, beautiful, right? Couldn't have planned that. Could have, but it was real, so that's better. And then we went through some definitional clips. We talked about our methodology, some properties we can add to that. There's the overarching thing of self-love, which is super important, right? And then we went through different versions of dominance, and I did some little graphs here of observing the intensity of our neighbors, right? And why my behavior was justified or not. Talked about that. So I did some self-criticism, which is super important. And then from the point of dominance, we have the position of standing your ground. We talked about physical standing your ground. Gave the beautiful case study of the dance floor and the mating and attraction and all the stuff involved with that. And then we talked about the mental space. Right. And then your point to really say is when you asked about empathy and what their perspective is, it's not about standing your ground. That's the focus. It's about the ground. That's the focus. And your willingness to concede where you currently are if you're incorrect, if the other person is actually being real. And only through questioning and being empathetic can we know. we talked about it's not the content specifically that is important to hold on to, but the process and the method. And for that process and method to be even able to be done, if you're going to go to the gym and work out, you got to eat something. If you're going to be able to be a philosopher king or a guardian or a good person, you need self-love. And there's things in that. We went through some specific beliefs, talked about why people hold on to beliefs, the problems of arrogance and incredulity. And then we went through a method of how to go through this stuff. And there's the social component of how we think together and how we think individually, which are overlapping. And the process or method of how to determine what the ground is, so I know I'm standing on it, right? That process is also similar in intimate relationships, is that I'm coming from this process of love. The narcissist is coming from that process because they are better than you. That's not a good relationship. You get rid of those relationships, right? And as a group, let us entertain and learn how to deal with narcissism as it is and whatever it is. Part of it might be due to cognitive capacity, and we'll learn together how to filter this out. We need to figure this out because it causes a lot of suffering for people, even though the narcissist may not experience it in the same way that the nons do. Yeah, and then we have a little side point on how curriculums are done in the Philosophy Society compared to the educational institution, the university. The university is very structured. This is a semi-structured approach, right? Which I think is better for learning because we have the time to do it and it's relevant to who's here. And yeah, other things like the Hawthorne effect and stuff like that. So, and obviously, yeah, we did the dance champion stuff and mating and attraction and those things that I know people may be upset about, and let's just talk about it. It's about nature, you know, and I may have an observation of nature, and I might be incorrect about it. And only through discussion and observation can we become clearer about what it is. And I'm believing in it, and I'm standing my ground by saying, this is what I've observed. If I am confused in some way, let us talk about it, right? And then the other point about certain students of philosophy that adamantly disagree and ridicule me for this, which is totally fine. Right? But again, they're not engaged in the process. They're doing a different thing, which is antisocial. And we don't want to be antisocial. That's not good. You disagree about stuff, but let us talk. Like one of those students threatened to assault me Friday night, for example. And so I called the police and made a report with the student conduct office. Right? I said, be a man. If you have a problem with somebody, you talk to them face to face. He's like, well, I'm just going to fight you, paraphrasing. I was like, that's dumb to say that because that's evidence for the Crown Attorney to charge you with assault now. Right? Don't do that. Talk to me. Be a man. Don't mock me in my chat group because that person was removed from the chat group recently. Right?
Okay. That was the reason.
Yes. Okay. And so, yeah. And we can talk about what are the motivations, reason you can do that evaluation. It's not, you don't have to do it now, but we can talk about that too. All right. Okay. Online community.